The year was 2000. I was Commissioner of Police, not here, in the scenic and beautiful city of Visakhapatnam. A jewel heist had happened. A gang of armed robbers shot at a jeweler and decamped with a booty of 63 lakh rupees cash. Sensational offense. Several days it remained on the headlines. We formed several detective teams, and in the end, we succeeded in detecting that case. We returned the money to the rightful owner, the jeweler. Yes, he was grateful, but not to the extent that we expected him to be. Around the same time, an old, poor lady who lived in an area called Purna Market in that city, she came to the commissioner's office. She was in the visitor's lounge. While entering the office, I noticed her, just went to her and struck a conversation. She said she had lost all her belongings in a burglary that had happened the previous night. All her belongings meant a few sets of clothes and some utensils. Perhaps the value could have been 4,000 to 5,000 rupees. Now, the first case, we had given it to the very senior officers experienced in detection. The second one was not a grave crime. First one was a grave crime in our police parlance, legal parlance. The second one was a simple crime where only 5,000 rupees had been lost. So it was consigned to the junior levels, not to be seriously followed up by the senior levels. Now what happened? Day after day, this lady kept on turning up at the office to find out whether her belongings had been located, whether she would ever get them back. It made us think, is it not that this 5,000 rupees this lady had lost had a far greater value in the eyes of humanity compared to the 63 lakhs the jeweler had lost? In the scale of law, it was a grave crime, a serious one, where 63 lakhs were lost. 5,000 was a very petty loss. But still, when you weigh in terms of the agony, the difficulty of that human heart, the scales were different. Our perception would be different. Let me tell you another incident. A decade earlier, sometime in 1990s, a very high-level political leader, a national leader, was assassinated. Along with him, 14 policemen also died in a collateral damage. As days went by, the investigations went on. The prominent person's death continued to be in headlines, and everybody knew, and everybody started thinking about. But these 14 lives that had been lost of the policemen were forgotten. Not many remembered. Not merely the outside, even within the police department, there's not much of concern to what had happened. Now, what are we trying to look at here? There was a widow there were 14 widows here. Is the agony of these 14 very ordinary people, their families, those widows, any less compared to the agony of the widow of the prominent person? Just think over it. Our perceptions are skewed in these matters. We try to look at life in degree of prominence, not at the way it impacts on the human hearts. Again, I'll take you back to the city of Vizag for yet another incident. Again, the year was 2000. We could see that here 217 deaths had happened on roads, 3 to 4 times more than the lives lost in murders. When one murder incident happens, the intensity with which we investigate, try to get at the culprit, same is not reflected when we look at the road accident. Deaths, perhaps here there are more productive deaths, of people who are in very productive age, because it's always the students, college-going students, and the breadwinners of the families who are exposed to traffic conditions more on their two-wheelers compared to the others. But then, why is it an accident does not stir us as much as a murder does? Loss of life here, perhaps in a murder case we cannot save the life, but here in the case of road accidents, by taking certain concerted, well-meaning steps, it's possible to save lives. With that thinking, with that philosophy behind our thought, we started working. What can we do to reduce deaths on roads? First, we thought citizens. What happens? Who is the first person to arrive at a scene of accident? It's the citizens. Why is it citizens don't show that concern to help the victim to rush him to the nearest medical facility? Because they are scared that they'll have to spend hours and hours visiting the police stations repeatedly. They would be summoned as witnesses to the courts. They did not want to have anything to do with the law enforcement machinery in these matters. Then we unleashed a huge campaign in that city. If you are saving life, if you are taking an accident victim to the nearest medical facility, be it a clinic or a well-equipped hospital, once you are taking him there, no questions would be asked. You will not be cited as a witness if you do not want to be. With that assurance, when we started arousing the inner feelings in the citizenry started acting. There was a second very important partner in the whole exercise, the medical fraternity. Any number of clinics and hospitals strewn across the city. We collected all of them with the help of the Indian Medical Association and addressed them on only one point. If an accident victim is brought to you, would you be germane enough, would you be humane enough to intervene to the extent of saving his life? Because there is what is called a concept of golden hour principle. Quickly, if you are taking an accident victim to the hospital, there are more chances than not to save the life. So once he has been brought, please don't wait for the police to arrive. Don't think in terms of the medical legal case, but then first save the life. Thereafter, once that is done, you tell the attendants, you tell the family members that you have the choice now, either to continue the treatment here or take him elsewhere. When we put forward this simple proposition before them, the response was overwhelming, very positive. Citizens, I'm cutting out some of the other players in the whole exercise. When we get together, we brought them together as law enforcement. The results were dramatic. Against a year-on-year rising trend of 5 to 6% more accidents, that year, by next year, the deaths on the roads, I'm not talking about accidents. Accidents were almost the same number of accidents. But whereas the number of deaths fell by 26%, which meant close to 50 young and productive lives were saved. It was a highly satisfying thing. Next few years, the same trend continued. What does it teach us? What does it tell us? When we see that we don't have a role, it's not my job to do. Here the medical fraternity would have said, I am a doctor. Whatever is come to me, I'll do legally and medically whatever is possible. But once they started putting their heart into that and started intervening, it made a difference. The citizens also did not feel it is not their job. They started collaborating. This beautiful collaboration between various agencies created such a synergy that tons of lives were saved in that city. Let me take you to another incident, and this is a little personal, about the perceptions. When I joined the Indian Police Service, as an young officer, I carried a lot of misconceptions, particularly our most important clients, the politicians, the MLAs, the MPs, sometimes the ministers. When they brought matters before us for action, we always used to feel they are crooked, they are dishonest, they have ulterior motives in getting something done from me. This was the perception that I and many other IPS officers in our young ages we carried. But then it created a problem. It created friction. It created distrust among us and stress on both the sides. Work was not getting done. When I was suffering with this sort of misconceptions, some of my seniors to whose notice this matter went, they did a lot of counseling. With that, and in part, the self-realization made us think that yes, a politician has a role in society. There may be some bad apples among them, like any other profession. But then there are any number of them who are well-meaning and then who want to do good. Perhaps they have better understanding of the societal problems, the people problems, because they live intimately and they are in touch with the grassroots than we, the officers who live in ivory towers. Problem was not the politician, all politicians. The problem was my perception of them, that I knew their motives and I was approaching from that angle. Once I started changing my perception, the way I started interacting with them, the collaboration became possible, frictions got reduced, and a lot of social good happened. Another incident here comes to my mind. I was Superintendent of Police, Nalgonda district, which is a neighboring district from here. We were back in 1988. That time, Mother Teresa had visited Hyderabad in 1988. At a very short notice, the then IG Intelligence rang me up and told that she wanted to visit an old age home in Nalgonda district. I was asked to make arrangements. I was in the midst of a meeting, my monthly crime review. I thought I will quickly wind up and then start attending to the request. I sent some officers to go in advance and start making arrangements. Meanwhile, suddenly, Mother Teresa, she walked into my office. I was very embarrassed. Such a great person coming into our midst, we did not even go to the entry point to the town and receive her properly. But then the word spread like wildfire in the town. Children abandoned the schools. They left the classrooms and then started coming in hundreds. The businessmen down their shutters. In offices, all the people who were working, they started coming out. Nearly a few hundred and close to 1,000, 1,500 people gathered at a time. You know, the businessmen whom we think, not only me, perhaps many of us keep thinking, always they are worried about their profits and how much money they can make through their business. Such people, voluntarily they started collecting money. Gunny bags of money, currency, coins were collected and donated to her. Why did this happen? On one side, there was a lady with proven credentials of service. On the other side, the innate goodness in every human heart that struck a chord, and bringing these two together, the end result was that. This perception that the businessman is always worried about his bottom lines and then profits got dispelled in that particular moment. Now let me come to something else. I was Commissioner of Police, Hyderabad, in a very, very tumultuous period, 2010 to 2012. City was in huge turmoil. In old city, we had to impose curfew because of communal problem. Telangana agitation was raging, and this place, the OsmaniaU city, was the epicenter for all action at that time. I had visited any number of times during that particular period. You see, now, there were political parties, there were people, there were students, many activists who were emotionally surcharged. It was a people's movement that was going up. Now, as law enforcement agency, what was our role? The top brass among us, the city police, we got together and started thinking, what should be our approach? My officers and I, we were totally convinced that we'll stick to our profession, we'll be thoroughly professional, and we'll not go beyond what oath we had taken when we passed out from our training institutions what oath we had taken. The oath that we had taken was simple. I will discharge all my duties with courage, with conviction, without fear, favor, ill will, or taking sides, strictly in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, respecting the rights of the people, and then following a due process of law. This is the oath that any IPS officer or even a constable, when he passes out of his institution, takes. That we will be truthful to this. We send down this simple message to every constable. There are thousands and thousands of them in Hyderabad City Police. But we made it an endeavor to take it down. The result was every one of them acted in a professional way. Ultimately, the testimony for us was, at the end of the whole agitation, the contending sides, they testified that the police acted in a very impartial and professional manner. Because what was our job? Our job was to see that tensions remain under control, the lives are not lost, the properties, whether it be private property or public property, is not destroyed, and life is allowed to continue as normal as possible. So this was our brief. And then we could do that. In the entire phase, not one life was lost due to a policeman's bullet. That was a sacred, the task that we had taken of ourselves, and then we could stick to that. This was a matter of great satisfaction for us. This was possible because we kept aside our personal prejudices, personal preferences, and personal emotions, our ideological tilts, and then discharge our duty in a very, very sincere and proper way. Now today, when I am here again in Osmania University, let me tell something personal. In the year 1980, when I was preparing for my civil services examinations, the hostels here, more precisely the B hostel, and then the iconic well-endowed library, these were the places of action for me. This is where I made my preparation and made it to the IPS. Even today, even this morning and yesterday and day before when I was going this side, I found hundreds and hundreds of youngsters moving around, talking about civil services, talking about public service commission examinations. Generations have changed, but the atmosphere remains the same. I wish all those youngsters, the students, all the very best when they want to get into that. But between our times and now, the things have changed quite a bit. Things have changed quite a bit. We had very few professions, good professions to select when we got into the job market. But today, your choices are far too many. Country has become prosperous, and globalization has happened. Newer technologies have invaded and every part of our lives, the society. Hundreds of careers to choose from, starting from agro-engineering to drones to AI, IT, and then many other such professions have come up. Think about them also, not merely about the civil services. They are as lucrative, as paying, as career advancing as civil services are. Perhaps civil services has a very, very difficult ratio of getting selected, 0.001% if you take services like IAS and IPS. 11 lakh students every year applying for it, and ultimately a few hundreds getting into that. That is the very, very adverse ratio that you have. But whereas hundreds of other careers that have come up in enterprising and then in private sector, they are begging for attention, begging for youngsters to come and take them up. Just think and then get into them. Anyway, now I'll conclude here. But before I conclude, let me just sum up. What is that I have tried to convey? If I have to put it in 2-3 brief forms. One is, in whatever avocation you are in life, please do not overlook the human emotions. Don't try to weigh everything in terms of monetary value, high, low, rich, poor. There is life much beyond that. The finer human feelings, the human agony, and human distress. That is one part, whatever profession you choose. The second one is our own perceptions. our own perceptions. When we let go of those perceptions, you see what dramatic changes can come about. As long as we have these skewed perceptions and then very personalized and then not open-minded type of perceptions, we are going to have problems in striking relationships, in networking, and in going ahead in life. So that is another thing that you should be seeing. The third one, where you think you do not have a role, if you become a little more creative, go beyond the call of your duty, your profession, and start thinking, you will definitely create a role where in a synergetic way, you will be able to definitely make a lot of good to society. As we saw in the Vizag, in the city of Vizag, when all those accidents were, not accidents were reduced, the deaths on roads were brought down, and so many lives were saved for the good of the society. Thank you.